The most famous chess game of all time was played in 1858 and is known as the Opera House game. It was played in, you guessed it, an opera house, between American chess prodigy Paul Morphy and the Duke of Brunswick, who was also teamed up with a French aristocrat playing against Morphy. This is a brilliant attacking game of chess with loads of sacrifices and tactics, so make sure you stick around. Morphy is playing with the white pieces in this game, and he starts off with e4. Best by test, says Bobby Fischer, who was not alive at the time. And the Duke responds with e5, and we have knight f3 immediately, putting pressure on the center, attacking this e5 pawn, which the Duke defends with d6. d6 is not a great move already, just because it blocks in the dark squared bishop here, so this bishop is not going to have an easy time getting into the game. Okay, we have d4 immediately striking in the center. Morphy is looking to, shred open the center and get this game over with so he can just sit and relax, watch the opera. Okay, so the Duke plays bishop g4. This is already not a great move because of d takes e5. And if you take the pawn back, well, then Morphy can take the queen here on d8, and after the king recaptures, the knight is no longer pinned to the queen, because the queens are no longer on the board, and Morphy would be able to just take this pawn on e5, be up a pawn, already threatening a fork, and getting very quick development, whereas, the Duke is going to be lacking in development and has to drop back likely to defend against the fork. It's just not great. So you can't take back like this right away. First, the Duke captures the knight, which, allows the queen to develop to an active square here on f3, and then the Duke recaptures the pawn in the center. Bishop c4 by Morphy, immediately threatening checkmate. It is move 6, and checkmate is being threatened. This is similar to a scholar's mate, if you've seen, queen h5, some crazy, right away, and then, you can blunder checkmate right away. This is the scholar's mate if you don't know. So Morphy he has this similar setup here with the queen and the bishop threatening mate on f7. Okay, so the Duke blocks checkmate with knight f6, but Morphy sees a really interesting way to keep pressure on the f7 pawn, but also attack another pawn that's undefended. And that move is swinging the queen over to b3, teaming up with the bishop, creating a battery against the f7 pawn, and attacking b7 here. Now, the Duke plays queen e7. This defends the f7 pawn, which is the more important pawn to defend, right? Because, if you waste, if you try to defend b7, well, then bishop takes f7 check, and the king's got to move, and it's stuck in the center, and it's +2. So the more important pawn to defend is the one on f7. So the Duke does that with queen e7, but you see now the dark squared bishop is going to really struggle to get in the game, and it's just not looking great already. See, it's already +1 for Morphy. Okay, now, Morphy plays knight c3. Why does he not take the pawn on b7? Because this allows queen b4 check. Queen b4 check, hitting the king, and forcing the queen trade. Now, this is still better for white, but the thing is, if pieces get traded like this, then the Duke would only be down a pawn. Yes, these pawns are very weak here, and the Duke would still be lacking development, but at least he's not getting checkmated, right? This is a much better situation than with the queens on the board. So that is why Morphy instead plays knight c3, defending the central pawn here on e4 as well. Now we have c6, defending the b7 pawn, so now the queen is kind of holding everything together, and it's kind of like what Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man, was it Spider-Man, which one is it, with the train scene, and he's in front of the train trying to stop it from going off the rails, and he's shooting webs to either side, just holding on, everything. Yeah, that's the queen right now. The queen is barely hanging on to these pawns with whatever flimsy webs she can, Oh, that was an interesting analogy. We have bishop g5, putting pressure on the knight, well, pinning the knight to the queen here, and just getting quick development and adding more pressure to the black position. b5 from the Duke. You see the eval start to jump up, and that is because this blunders a really cool tactic here. And it is a sacrifice of the knight. Now, it is a sacrifice for 2 pawns, so 2 pawns for the knight, which isn't an insane material sacrifice, but it's so clear that white is just killing here. I mean, this is check, first of all, so you have to block the check. And just look at the queen, the bishop, this rook is coming in, this rook is coming in, and you also have a passed c-pawn and a 3-on-1 over here. So even if you do get into an endgame without checkmating the king, then you have some good opportunities going, and you have the bishop pair as well in a very open position. These are all pluses to the white position. Okay. So, yeah, he sees you don't just want to drop the bishop back because this is just passive, right? And black is going to be able to develop and end up kind of getting out of the woods here because you're no longer pressuring f7 so much. So Morphy sacrifices the knight on b5. And after he takes back the knight here, takes with the bishop check, and the knight blocks. Okay, now, we want to put pressure on the pinned piece, right? PP on the PP, of course. The knight on d7 is pinned to the king, and so Morphy decides to long castle. This gets the king out of the center and the rook into the game, immediately putting pressure on the knight and actually threatening to take. Because if you don't do anything, if you try to, let's say like a literal nothing move is played like this, then you can take. And your knight can't take back because you would lose your queen, right? The knight is pinned, and it's just not great. You actually have to give up the queen here. This is the best line, but you see it's +6. So, you have to defend the knight with rook a to d8. But here's the thing. This bishop is a monster in this game. This is like a 20-point bishop here. You know why? Rook takes d7. Another sacrifice. First, Morphy sacrificed the knight on b5, and now sacrifices the exchange on d7. The Duke is now up 3 points of material, and yet is completely lost. Let's see how Morphy finishes this game off. You know how? He brings the other rook. He's like, oh, this rook on d1? I don't need it. Get it out of here. I got another one. I got backup here. The h rook coming into d1. Now putting pressure on this rook, which is still pinned to the king. Amazing stuff here. So Morphy, the Duke plays queen e6, unpinning the knight, so now the knight can defend the rook. Okay. And also, this is offering a queen trade. Morphy does not want a queen trade here because, well, he is down material, 3 points of material. So if you trade all the pieces without mating the king or getting material back, then you're just going to lose. So Morphy decides to start cashing in. He takes the rook on d7 check, forcing knight takes d7. And here, my friends, Morphy sacrifices the queen. With queen to b8. Check. Double exclamation mark, a brilliant move. It's forced mate, because the knight has to take the queen back. And remember this dark squared bishop that came over here? This bishop moved 1 time the entire game, and is the mechanism that allows the rook to checkmate the black king on d8. This is brilliant stuff. Let's go through the game one more time real quick. e4, e5, knight f3, d6, you know, blocking in the dark squared bishop, not great. d4 immediately striking in the center, and the bishop comes out. But this allows Morphy to open up the center. You can't take back, or you lose the pawn in the center, and just development in general. So bishop takes f3, queen takes f3, and then recapturing in the center. But bishop c4 threatens checkmate on f7. Knight f6 defends, but queen b3 continues the attack on the f7 pawn and hits b7. We have queen e7. Knight develops to c3, c6 defending both pawns here with the queen. Toby Maguire, remember? And then we have bishop g5 pinning the knight to the queen, b5. Just lashing out on the queen side without any development, and the king is stuck in the center. So knight sacrifices itself on b5, and then c takes b5, bishop takes b5, and that's a check, so you gotta block, and then long castles, and sacrificing the rook here to bring the other rook as backup. And then queen e6 offers a queen trade and unpins the knight, but bishop takes d7, knight takes d7, and queen b8 check. And rook d8 mate. Paul Morphy was clearly an extremely talented chess player, and you know who else is really good at chess? Magnus Carlsen. You want to see the game that made him the world champion back in 2013? Make sure you check out this video here. All right, Have a good one, guys.